Well, good morning, my friends. I hope you're having a lovely, lovely day. I hope you have already made your cup of coffee for the day. If you have not, I'm going to give you a little break here in a second for you to go make your coffee because you're going to want to have something to sip on. Sit back and relax. Turn on the stair machine or go for your walk because I'm going to be reading you a story today. If you don't have a great coffee, I'm going to share one with you. So I have my very first sponsor. I'm so excited about this. So it's a sponsor friend that I've known for almost my entire life. She is a fellow nerd, seeker of the truth, and book enthusiast who also loves to drink coffee. She developed her own line of coffee. It is called Poured Over Pages. Of course, it is all book themed. I bought her sample pack. I was her first person who ordered when she started up her company last year. And I've been hooked ever since. You can get whole bean. You can already get it ground, or you can get little K-cups. You can get sample packs. You can get the whole bag, whatever you need. With the sponsor code that I'm going to put in the comments, you get 10% off. It ships real fast. I mean, like, don't hold me to it, but I feel like I had it in 4 or 5 days. Pretty fast, right? It's not on Amazon, so you don't get next day, but quality. And you can go in and read what it's about. They're all book themed. Fabulous. This is the fall pecan pie paperback. I haven't tried it yet because I just got it. So it's at pouredoverpages.com. You can look at everything. If you want the code, though, you keep going and do /discount/Cheryl10, or I'll put the link in. All right. I'm going to play a little song for you. You're going to go get some coffee and come on back. All right. You're back. You got your coffee. You got your water, whatever you're doing today. I want you to settle in. I'm going to read you a children's story today. So those of you who know me know that I'm an educator and I love reading stories to kids. I still read to all my kids. Even my big one sometimes gets tired of it, but we've always read lots of books. I'm going to read you a short novelette today. What's a novelette? You're going to learn something today as well. It may be backwards on the picture here because I don't know if I have this on flip or on actual, but James Clavell, The Children's Story. Now, it's short. Don't be scared. It's not that long. There's not that many pages. Some of the pages have small text. This is one of the first dystopian novels. Now, everybody's into those now, right? The Mockingjay, Handmaid's Tale, those are dystopian novels. Okay, if you don't know what that is, it's like if there was the author takes something extreme that we currently have in our society and they put it as if the whole society is run by that extreme thing. Man in the High Castle was a series that was on for a few years. Similar topic. What if we didn't win World War II? Half of America was given to Japan. The other half was given to Germany. The no man's land in the middle was kind of like that, like white flag area. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, up through there. And what happened on each side when the extreme Nazis came over and the extremes from Japan came over and what they did. It's amazing. But today, I'm going to read this to you. Sit back, relax. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk about the first time that I heard this story and give you some background on it and my thoughts about it. I need one more sip of coffee. All right, here we go. The Children's Story. But not just for children, for all children everywhere. The teacher was afraid, and the children were afraid. All except Johnny. He watched the classroom door with hate. He felt the hatred deep within his stomach, and it gave him strength. It was 2 minutes till 9. The teacher glanced numbly from the door and stared at the flag which stood in a corner of the room. But she couldn't see the flag today. She was blinded by her terror, not only for her children, or not only for herself, but mostly for them, her children. She had never had children of her own, and she had never married. In the mist of her mind, she saw the rows upon rows of children that she had taught through her years. Their faces were legion, but she could distinguish no one particular. Only the same face, which varied slightly. Always the same age or thereabouts, 7, perhaps a boy, perhaps a girl, and the face always open and ready for the knowledge that she was to give. The same face staring at her, open, waiting, and full of trust. The children wrestled, watching her, wondering what possessed her. They saw not the gray hair and the old eyes and the lined face and the well-worn clothes. They only saw their teacher and the twisting of her hands. Johnny looked away from the door and watched the other children. He did not understand anything except that the teacher was afraid, and because she was afraid, she was making them all worse, and he wanted to shout out that there was no need to fear. Just because they've conquered us, there's no need to panic. Dad had said, "Don't be afraid, Johnny. If you fear too much, you'll be dead, even though you're alive." The sound of footsteps approached and then stopped. The door opened. The children gasped. They had expected an ogre or giant or beast or witch or monster, like the outer space monsters you think about when the lights are out and Mama and Daddy have kissed you goodnight and you're frightened and you pull your head under the covers and all at once you're awake and it's time for school. But instead of a monster, a beautiful young girl stood in the doorway. Her clothes were neat and clean, all olive green, even her shoes. But most important, she wore a lovely smile, and when she spoke without the trace of an accent. The children found this very strange, for they were foreigners from a strange country far from the sea. They had all been told about them. "Good morning, children. I'm your new teacher," the new teacher said. Then she closed the door softly and walked to the teacher's desk, and the children in the front row felt and smelled the perfume of her, clean and fresh and young. And as she passed Sandra, who sat at the end of the first row, she said, "Good morning, Sandra." And Sandra flushed deeply and wondered aghast with all the other children. How did she know my name? And her heart raced in her chest and made it feel tight and very heavy. The teacher got up shakily. Good morning." Her words were faltering. She, too, was trying to get over the shock and nausea. "Hello, Miss Warden," the new teacher said. "I'm taking over your class now. You are to go to the principal's office." "Why? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my children?" The words gushed from Mrs. Warden, and a lank piece of hair fell into her eyes. The children were agonized by the cut to her voice, and one or two of them felt on the edge of tears. "He just wants to talk to you, Miss Warden," the new teacher said gently. "You really must take better care of yourself. You shouldn't be so upset." Miss Warden saw the new teacher's smile, but she wasn't touched by its compassion. She tried to stop her knees from shaking. "Goodbye, children," she said. The children made no reply. They were too terrified by the sound of her voice and the tears that wet her face. And because she was crying, some of the children cried, and Sandra fled to her. But the new teacher shut the door behind Mrs. Warden and turned back into the room, cradling Sandra in her arms. Children, there's no need to cry," she said. "I know, I'll sing you a song. Listen." And she sat down on the floor as gracefully as an angel, Sandra in her arms, and she began to sing, and the children stopped crying because Miss Warden never sang to them before, and certainly never sat on the floor, which is the best place to sit, as everyone knows. They listened spellbound to the happy lilt of the new teacher's voice and to the strange words of a strange tongue which soared and dipped like the sea of grass that was at the birthplace of the song. It was a child's song, and it soothed them. And after she had sung the first chorus, the new teacher told them the story of the song. It was about two children who had lost their way and were all along the great grass prairies, and they were afraid. But they met a fine man riding a fine horse, and the man told them that there was never any to be afraid, for all they had to do was to watch the stars, and the stars would tell them where their home was. For once you know the right direction, then there's never a need to be afraid. Fear is something that comes from inside your tummies, the new teacher said radiantly. And good, strong children like you have to put food in your tummies, not fear. The children thought about this, and it seemed very sensible. The new teacher sang the song again, and soon all the children were happy and calm once more. Except Johnny. He hated her, even though he knew that she was right about fear. "Now," said the new teacher, "what shall we do?" "I know, we'll play a game. I'll try and guess your names." The children, wide-eyed, shifted in their seats. Miss Warden never did this, and often she even called a child by another kid's name. The new teacher will never know all our names. Never, they thought. So they waited excitedly while the new teacher turned her attention to Sandra. Oh yes, somehow she did already know Sandra's name. But how could she possibly know everyone's? They waited, glad that they were going to catch out the new teacher. But they were not to catch her out. The new teacher remembered every name. So Johnny put his hand up. How'd you know our names? Well, we haven't a roll call or anything, so how did you know our names? That's easy, Johnny, the new teacher said. You all sit in the same places every day. Each desk has one pupil. So I learned your names from a list. I had to work for 3 whole days to remember your names. A teacher must work very hard to be a good teacher, and so I worked for 3 days so that I could know each of you on the first day. It's very important, don't you think, for a teacher to work hard? Johnny frowned and half nodded and sat down and wondered why he hadn't figured that out for himself before asking, astonished that she had worked 3 days just to know everyone the first day. But he still hated her. Johnny, would you tell me something, please? How do you start school? What do you do to begin it? Johnny stood reluctantly. We first pledge the allegiance, and then we sing the song. Yes, but that's all after roll call, Sandra said. You forgot roll call. Yes, you forgot roll call, Johnny, Mary said. Well, first we have roll call, Johnny said. Then he sat down. The new teacher smiled. All right, but we really don't need roll call. I do know everyone's name, and I know everyone's here. It's a lazy teacher that would not know everyone's here. And who isn't, don't you think? After all, a teacher should know. So we don't need roll call while I'm your teacher. So we should pledge. Isn't that next? Obediently, all the children got up and put their hands on their hearts, and the new teacher did the same. And they began in unison. I pledge allegiance to the flag of... Just a moment, the new teacher said. What does pledge mean? The children stood open-mouthed. Miss Warden had never interrupted them before. They stood and stared at this new teacher, wordless and silent. What does allegiance mean? The teacher asked, her hand over her heart. The children stood in silence. Then Mary put up her hand. Well, pledges, sort of when you do something very good. You sort of pledge you're going to do something like not suck your thumb anymore, because that makes your teeth bend, and you'll have to wear braces and go to the dentist, which hurts. That's very good, Mary. Very, very good. So to pledge means to promise. And allegiance? Mary shrugged helplessly and looked at her best friend Hilda, who looked back at her and then at the teacher and shrugged helplessly. The new teacher waited, and silence hung in the room, hurting. And then she said, I think it's quite wrong for you to have to say something with long words in it if you don't even understand what you're saying. So the children sat down and waited expectantly. What did your other teacher tell you that it meant? And after a long silence, Danny put up his hand. She never said nothing, miss. One of the teachers at the other school I went to before this one, Joan said in a rush. Well, she sort of said that it was all meant, at least she said something about it just before recess one day, and then the bell went, and then afterwards we had spelling. Danny said, Miss Warden, well, she never told us. We just had to learn it and then say it, that's all. Our real teacher didn't say anything at all. All the children nodded, and they waited again. So your teacher never explained it to you? All the children shook their heads. Well, I don't think that is very good, not to explain. You can always ask me anything. That's what a real teacher should do. Then the new teacher said, but didn't you ask your daddies and mommies? Not about I pledge. We just had to learn it, Mary said. Once I could say it, Daddy gave me a nickel for saying it real good. That's right, Danny said. So long as we could say it, it was good. But I never got no nickel. Did you ask each other what it meant? I asked Danny once, and he didn't know, and none of us knowed, really. It's grown-up talk, and grown-ups talk that sort of words. We just had to learn it. The other school I went to, Hilda said, they never said anything about it. They just wanted us to learn it. They didn't ask what it meant. We just had to say it every day before we started school. It took me weeks and weeks and weeks to say it right, Mary said. So the new teacher explained what allegiance meant. So you're promising or pledging support to the flag and saying that it's much more important than you are. But how can a flag be more important than a real live person, she said. So Johnny broke the silence. But the next thing is, well, where it says, and to the republic for which it stands, that means it's like a, he searched for a word and he couldn't find it. Like sort of a sign, isn't it? Yes, the real word is symbol, the teacher frowned. But we don't need a sign to remind us that we love our country, do we? You're all good boys and girls. Do you need a sign to remind you? What's remind mean? Mary asked. It means to make you remember. to make you remember that you're all good boys and girls. The children thought about this. They shook their heads. Johnny put up his hand, though. It's our flag, he said fiercely. We always pledge. Yes, the new teacher said. It is a very pretty one. And she looked at it a moment. And then she said, I do wish I could have a piece of it. If it's so important, I think we should all have a piece of it. Don't you? I have a little one at home, Mary said. I could bring it tomorrow. Thank you, dear Mary, but I just want a little piece of this one because it's our own special classroom one. Then Danny said, if we had some scissors, we could cut a little piece off. I have some scissors at home, Mary said. And there's some in Miss Warden's desk, Brian said. So the new teacher found the scissors, and they all had to decide who would be allowed to cut a little piece off. And the new teacher said that because it was Mary's birthday. How did she know that? Mary asked herself. That Mary should be allowed to cut the piece off. And then they decided it would be very nice if they all each had a piece. The flag is special, they thought. So if you have a piece, that's better than just having it to look at, because you could just keep it in your pocket. So the flag was cut up by the children, and they were all very proud that they each had a piece. But now the flagpole was bare and strange and useless. The children pondered what to do with it, and the idea that pleased them the most was to push it out the window. They watched excitedly as the new teacher opened the window and allowed them to throw it into the playground. They shrieked with excitement as they saw it bounce on the ground and lie there, and they began to love this new, strange teacher. When they were all back in their seats, the new teacher said, well, before we start our lessons, perhaps there are some questions you want to ask me. Ask me anything you like. It's only fair, isn't it, if I ask you questions? And Mary said after a moment, we never get to ask our real teacher any questions. You can ask me anything. That's the fair way. The new way. Try me. What's your name? Danny asked. And she told him her name, and it sounded very pretty. Mary put up her hand. Why do you wear those clothes? It's like sort of a nurse's uniform. We think teachers should be dressed all the same. Then you will always know when someone is a teacher. It's nice and light and easy to iron, too. Do you like the color? Oh, yes, Mary said. You've got green eyes, too. If you like children, as a very special surprise, you can all have one of these sort of uniforms, too. Then you won't have to worry what to wear each day at school, and you'll all be the same. The children twisted excitedly in their seats. Mary said, but if it'll cost a lot, my mama won't want to spend the money because we've got to buy food, and food is expensive. Well, it's cost a lot of money. That's okay. They'll be given to you as a present. There's no need to worry about money. Johnny said, I don't want to be dressed like that. You don't have to accept a present, Johnny. Just because the other children want to wear the new clothes, you don't have to, the new teacher said. Johnny slunk back in his chair. I'm never going to wear their clothes, he said to himself. I don't care if I'm going to look different from Danny and Tom and Fred. Then Mary asked, why was our teacher crying? I suppose she was tired and needed a rest. She is going to have a long rest. She smiled at them. We think teachers should be young. I'm 19. Is the war over now? Danny asked. Yes, Danny, isn't that wonderful? Now all of your daddies will be home soon. Well, did we win or did we lose? Mary asked. We? That's you and I and all of us. We won. And the children sat back happily. Then Johnny's hatred burst. Where's my dad? What have they done to my dad? Where is he? The new teacher got up from her seat and walked the length of the room, and the children's eyes followed her, and Johnny stood, knees of jelly. She sat down on a seat and put her hands on his shoulders that were shaking like his knees. He's going to a school. Some grown-ups have to go back to school, just as well as children. But they took him away, and he didn't want to go. Johnny felt the tears close, and he fought them back. The new teacher touched him gently, and he smelled the youth and cleanliness of her. It was not the smell of home, which was sour and just a little dirty. He's no different than all of you. You sometimes don't want to go to school, and with grown-ups it's the same. Just like children. Would you like to visit him? He has a holiday in a few days. Mama said Daddy's gone forever. Johnny stared at her incredulously. He has a holiday? The new teacher laughed. She's wrong, Johnny. After all, everyone who goes to school has holidays. That's fair, isn't it? The children shifted and rustled and watched, and Johnny said, and I can go see him? Of course, your daddy just has to go back to school a little. He had some strange thoughts, and he wanted other grown-ups to believe them. It's not right to want others to believe wrong thoughts, is it? Well, I suppose not, but my dad never did anything wrong. Nothing bad. Of course, honey, I said wrong thoughts, not bad thoughts. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's right to show grown-ups the right thoughts when they're wrong, isn't it? Well, yes, Johnny said, but what wrong thoughts did he have? Well, just some grown-up thoughts that are old-fashioned. We're going to learn all about them in our class. Then we can share our knowledge, and I can learn from you as you will learn from me. Shall we? All right. Johnny stared at her, perplexed. My dad couldn't have wrong thoughts, though. He just couldn't. Could he? Well, perhaps sometime when you wanted to talk about something very important to your dad, he might have said, not now, Johnny, I'm busy. Or we'll talk about that tomorrow. And that's a bad thought. Not to give you the time when it's important, isn't it? Sure, but all grown-ups do that. My mama says that all the time, said Mary. And the other children nodded, and they wondered if all their parents should go back to school and unlearn bad thoughts. Sit down, Johnny, and we'll start learning the good things and not worry about grown-up bad thoughts. Oh, yes, she said. And when she sat down in her seat, brimming with happiness, I have a lovely surprise for you. You're all going to stay overnight with us. We have a lovely room and beds and lots of food, and we'll all tell stories and have a lovely time. Good, the children said. Can I stay up till 8 o'clock? Mary asked breathlessly. Well, it's our first day, so we'll all stay up till 8:30, but only if you promise to go to sleep right afterward. The children all promised, of course, and they were all very happy. Jenny said, but first we've got to say our prayers before we go to sleep. The teacher smiled at her. Of course. Perhaps we should say a prayer now. In some schools, that's a custom, too. She thought a moment, and the faces watched her. Let's pray, but let's pray for something very good. What should we pray for? Bless Mama and Daddy, Danny said immediately. That's a good idea, Danny. I have one. Let's pray for Candy. That's a good idea, isn't it? They all nodded happily. So they followed their new teacher and all closed their eyes and steepled their hands together, and they all prayed for Candy. The new teacher opened her eyes and they looked around disappointedly. But where's our Candy? God is all seeing and he is everywhere, and if we pray, he answers our prayers. Isn't that true? I prayed for a puppy of my own lots of times, but I never got one, Danny said. Maybe we didn't pray hard enough. Perhaps we should kneel down like it's done in church. So the new teacher knelt, and all the children knelt, and they prayed very, very hard. But there was still no Candy. Because the new teacher was disappointed, the children were disappointed. Then she said, perhaps we're using the wrong name. She thought a moment, and then she said, instead of saying God, let's say our leader. Let's pray to our leader for Candy. Let's pray very hard, and don't open our eyes until I say so. So the children shut their eyes tightly, and they prayed very hard, and as they prayed, the new teacher took out some candy from her pocket and quietly put a piece on each child's desk. She did not notice Johnny, alone of all of the children, was watching her, though, through his half-closed eyes. She went softly back to her desk, and the prayer ended, and the children opened their eyes, and they stared at their candy, and they were overjoyed. I'm going to pray to our leader every time, Mary said excitedly. Me too, Hilda said. Could we eat our leader's candy now, please? Oh, yes, please, please. So our leader answered our prayers, didn't he? I saw you put the candy on our desks, Johnny burst out. I saw you. I didn't close my eyes, and I saw you. You had them in your pocket. You didn't get them praying. You put them there. All the children were appalled and stared at him, and then stared at the teacher. She stood in the front of the class and looked back at Johnny, and then at all of them. Yes, Johnny, you are quite right. You're a very, very wise boy, Johnny. Children, I put the candy on your desks, so you know that it doesn't matter to whom you ask, whom you shut your eyes and pray to God, to anyone, even our leader. No one will give you anything. Only another human being will. She looked at Danny. God didn't give you a puppy that you wanted, but if you work hard, I will. Only I or someone else can give you something. Praying to God or anyone or anything for something is a waste of time. Then we don't say prayers? We're not supposed to say prayers? The puzzled children watched her. You can if you want to, children. If your daddies and mommies want you to. But we know, you and I, that it really means nothing. That's our secret. My dad says it's wrong to have secrets from him. But he has secrets that he shares with your mommy and not with you, doesn't he? The teacher said. All the children nodded. Then it's not wrong for us to have a few secrets from them, is it? I like secrets, Hilda said. Mary said, me and Hilda have lots of secrets. The new teacher said, we're going to have all sorts of wonderful secrets together. You can eat your candy if you want to. And Johnny, especially because he's an especially clever boy, I think we should make him the monitor for the whole week, don't you? They all nodded happily and popped the candy into their mouths and chewed gloriously. Johnny was very proud that when he chewed his candy, he decided that he did like the teacher very much because she told the truth, because she was right about fear, because she was right about God. He had prayed many times for many things and never gotten them. And even the one time he did get some skates, he knew that his dad had heard him and had put them under his bed for his birthday and he pretended he hadn't heard him. I always wondered why he didn't listen to all the other times he wasn't there, he thought. Johnny sat back contentedly, resolved to work hard and listen and not to have wrong thoughts like his dad. The teacher waited for them to finish their candy. This was what she had been trained for. And she knew that she would teach her children well, and they would all grow up to be good citizens. She looked out the window at the sun over the land. It was a good land in Bast, a land to breathe in. But she was warmed not by the sun, but that by the thought that throughout the school and throughout the land, all children, all men, and all women were being taught this same faith, with variations of the same procedures according to each age group, each according to his need. She glanced at her watch. It was 9:23. All right. That was 25 minutes long. If you listened to the whole thing, you are probably having lots of thoughts swirling around right now. So I will tell you, I first heard this story in a college English class. And the professor came in, same kind of thing, just read it and said it was a children's story. And it was early morning. I think we started class at like 7:30. It was an early morning class and I was half asleep. And I thought it was a children's story because I was in early childhood education. And this was just a regular English class, but we talked a lot. It was a lot of educator majors in the class. And we talked a lot about children's books. I thought it was going to be a children's story. And then I remember when they started cutting up the flag, I remember crying. I was like, no. What are you doing? What are you doing? And I've told people this before. As educators, we go through lots of classes about motivation, what motivates people and children, children's needs and wants, what they need to grow, what they need to develop, and how we as teachers can get them to do things to do their work, to follow directions, all of these things. But we also had conversations about how you could easily manipulate children. And there are horrible, evil people out there who will use these techniques that can be for good, for evil. The author wrote this book. If you get the book, and that's the book, and then at the back is in his actual handwriting what he wrote about it. He wrote this book one afternoon when his daughter, who was around the 7 to 8 age, came home, and he was asking her some questions about school, just the regular questions. So he's an author, and he asks deeper questions than some, and she couldn't explain why. That beginning, like, what does pledge mean? What does allegiance mean? You're just asking your kid these questions, like, okay. And he literally sat down and wrote this story out. And he talked about how he normally would, as authors do, edit and change and blah, 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 blah. But he literally only changed 3 words in this entire story. It was first published in the Ladies' Home Journal in the 60s, later in print, and then a short film. So if you ever want to look, it's on YouTube. It's older. It's from the 80s. And I like both versions, but I do like the written word version as well. And I wanted to read it for you so that you would have that same experience that I had sitting in class in probably 1998, listening to my professor read this aloud, and the shock. and how it just swirls so many things in your mind about how easy it is to manipulate children and people. It's really an allegory. You can these same techniques can be used for people. You think about cult leaders, how you get them to turn and look at, well, your mommies and daddies would never, what are they doing? Oh, they don't know. They're just having bad thoughts, right? And so they don't turn the children on their parents as in these parents are horrible, 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 but they sneak in doubt. And they sneak in, we're going to have these secrets, and it's okay to have secrets because other people have secrets, and we're going to have some secrets. And you build that camaraderie. It's like a gang, right? You build that camaraderie of family, and oh, we know a little bit more than them, so it's okay. But it begins to create that chasm and that separation. And like a cult or a gang, it's hard to leave and then hard to ever get back to normal. It's manipulation and it's brainwashing. And it makes you go back and forth. Because like I said, I've told people before, I mean, I could motivate the kids to do or believe almost anything. And this syrupy, sweet, young, beautiful teacher comes in, and how quickly. So the author puts the timestamp in there. What? Okay, it starts, it's 2 minutes to 9 when the story begins. And then in 30, oh, it was 9:23. So 25 minutes. Think about what this person gets the children to do. Destroy the flag, obviously, because this would have been after a war is kind of what it is. And to start that dismantling of national pride, begin to doubt your parents, that the government knows better than you. All of these, like those big topics that are scary, and it just did. Like I said, I remember crying. I looked for this book a couple of different times. I've never been able to find it, and the other day it popped into my brain again, and I was like, "Oh, I'm ordering that book. I'm ordering that book." So I believe this is still one of the ones from the '80s when it was published into the book. Because you can tell it's obviously an older one, and it's a small little version. But man, it just gets you thinking. It gets you thinking about making sure as parents that something I want to do, I want to make sure that my child is an analytical thinker for themselves, and that they don't just, obviously I want to instill my customs and beliefs in my children, but I also want them to be free thinkers and think for themselves. We want that, right? It's like we want our students, our kids to, our personal children to choose a religion, right? But we want it, we want certain ones, but it's like, okay, well, if they chose, I want to know about all of them so I can make a good choice, right? And hopefully it would be ones that are close in line with what our family values are and that type of thing. And so the techniques can be so positive. Like that's something I say to my kids. In our family, we this and this. That's okay. Like if they're talking about another kid, like, well, they did whatever. I don't want to disparage somebody else's parenting or whatever. I'm like, well, in our family, we eat chicken on Fridays, whatever it is. Obviously it's deeper things than that, but that's not a word that we use in our family. Like my husband, they say but in my husband's family. It's not a bad word, but like growing up, we didn't say but. So like they would use it the same way you say, like, wipe your bottom, like, cover your bottom, cover your butt. And I'm like, that's a word. I know I'm old Southern Baptist girl, and we didn't say those words. And I mean, it's at school, like kindergartner in my day, if you said but, that was like a bad word, right? And so, in our family, we don't say but. I know that's silly. Like, I don't let my kids say shut up. Sorry, we don't say that. It's not a horrible thing, but we don't say it, and building that family value, core values is positive, but you could easily see how you could turn it like this teacher did. Master manipulator, this teacher did. Just started slowly turning it around. Even got Johnny there at the end because she knew that pride was really important to him. And she didn't dig into him like, that's okay. It's okay. She knew that positive, it's called positive peer pressure. If everybody else is going to have on the green uniform and this kid is already a rule follower, he's going to figure it out and he's going to put it on that uniform. I don't have to be the one to push it in there and create a battle with him. He's going to want to do it. She gave him, he's going to be the monitor because he values truth. So she gives him the praise. He values truth. She praised him for finding out that she had given out the candy, got the children to turn away from their religion, basically like that. Praying's not important. No one's going to give you anything but me, right? The government. And, it makes you just think like, okay, where did Johnny's dad go? Was he at a re-education camp or was he in the gas chamber? Like all these things, when you start thinking about like, okay, what he wrote about this kind of like during the Cold War, was he thinking more like, Germany, that type of thing, like gas chamber, or were they more like the Russian re-education camps? All of those things. It just brings up so many, many, many topics that I thought were really important. So, um, I hope that you enjoyed that today. And my challenge today is for you to think about your own family and your own personal values and how you could see these techniques or something in your own life. Try to find a parallel, because there's so many. Like, man, what a brilliant author literally had this idea to write this, and just brings up so many things. So if you want to get it, it's James Clavell, Clavell, the children's story. It's on Amazon. I don't know if it's in print anywhere else anymore. I know you can find it just in written form on the internets. But hope you had a wonderful day. I think I'm going to have a conversation with this on my other podcast and go a little bit deeper. So if you want to hear that, you can jump over to that one. So have a wonderful day, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.